How y'all doing today? For those that watched my channel before, you guys seen that I made a why we are Eritrean video. I took it down because I felt like I could have done a little bit better. And even though I don't think I know anything more than what I did before, I kind of want to just redo it anyway. You know, it might take a little, I'm freestyling it, so, you know, I'm gonna, it might be a little choppy, you know what I'm saying? But basically, there's a big mystery between or about Eritrea, right? Nobody understands what it is because everybody thinks that, why aren't you Ethiopia? We know Ethiopia, the Bible, etc. We never defeated by Western powers, etc. So I'm here to illuminate that. I'm going to be going back and forth. So, you know, you're going to have to try to capture the timeline in your own mind. But Eritrea, the scramble for Africa, right? 7 European countries came and split up Africa as colonies, correct? All right. They had a meeting called the Berlin Conference, where Leopold, King Leopold, I think he was of Belgium, basically he hosted it, and it was the rules and regulations for how, basically, honor amongst thieves, to make sure that France didn't step on Spain's toes, Spain didn't step on England's toes, etc. Right? They wanted to be efficient, right? At this time, they didn't even know Africa. They were sending missionaries, they were sending adventurers, etc., to go map out Africa because they had no true map. They didn't know all the rivers and mountains, etc. Right? So they were sending a lot of expeditions over there. Now, when they made a colony, they created what we know of today as a nation state, right? They made a nation state. So Italy, for example, with Eritrea, in 1890, January 1st, 1890, like, you know, because it was a corporation. You have to remember, all nation states are corporations. U.S., everybody, Eritrea included. They made Eritrea on 1890, January 1st, all right? All right, cool. That's kind of common knowledge, great. Now, the misconception comes with Ethiopia, and this is why Eritrea becomes so important, because our history exposes the falseness of what Ethiopian history really is. So, the European powers came, oh, and mind you, if you go back in history, Italy was made in 1870. Germany was made in 1868. Remember, Germany used to be Prussia. Italy used to be the Kingdom of Naples, the Kingdom of Sardinia. The man who sent Giuseppe Sapetto, the first missionary to come to Asib in Eritrea, was King Umberto. He was a king. He wasn't a president. He wasn't a prime minister. You see what I'm saying? He was a king. So they basically mapped out Africa, and they created these nation states. Why? Illuminati, right? And when you say Illuminati don't exist today, just like the Black Panthers don't exist today. Illuminati is, they come from Bavaria, Germany, and it's sometime in the 1500s. They were the infiltrators of Freemasonry, right? But their ideology was simple. It was, we need to get rid of every sovereign king of the world. In essence, take God out of government, right? Take God out of government. So what they did was, this philosophy held true. And the reason why it held true so bad, because they had something called the 30 Years' War, which is ironic because Eritrea and Ethiopia had a 30-year war as well. But there was a 30 Years' War with the remnants of the Holy Roman Empire. If you look up the Holy Roman Empire, you will see that it's centered in Germany, in Bavaria, Germany. Why? Because the Moors set up what they call their empire, which was a junior empire to the Ottoman Empire. So it goes like this: the Ottomans came and they had all the knowledge. They had all the knowledge because they extracted it from Egypt, and they created their own mystery school system. And their own mystery school system ended up being Freemasonry, all right? That's what Egypt created. Egypt created a mystery school system in order to keep order during the Dark Ages, which is about the third dimension of time, etc., which I'll make another video about. But Egypt made a mystery school system to have an orderly decline of the civilization. So what they ended up doing, the Ottomans, is they took all the knowledge, they put in Freemasonry, and they made the North Africans, the Berbers, right, junior partners in their empire. They couldn't conquer, or they didn't have the population. So people that they did conquer, they said, listen, you go take this, we'll supply you, we'll tell you what to do, you know, how to do it, whatever, we'll back you up, and you pay taxes, basically. So the Berbers did that. They conquered Spain, they went all the way to Germany, eventually they conquered most of Europe, all the way to Scotland, etc. So they had castles built everywhere, and they had a network of government in Europe. And these, eventually that system failed. It lasted 700 years. It started in the beginning in Spain, 711, and then ended in 1492 when Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand in Spain merged, and they got the last remnants of the Moors out of Spain. So I want to say maybe 100 years after 711 and 100 years before 1492. I don't know exactly, to be sure, you'd have to look it up, but that's the peak of the Moorish Empire in Europe. So this is why Germany has so many Turks. There's the second, just like America has a lot of Hispanic people, Germany has a lot of Turks. You have to remember, in World War I, it was the Allies, the British, etc., versus the Ottoman Empire. That's how big they were up until World War I, right? And the Turks still are a huge minority in Germany. But anyway, so we know that Europe was in the Dark Ages. Oh, the 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War was when the Europeans finally took hold of every state of government: Norway, Sweden, Belgium, blah, blah, blah. What we know of today. There are different names then. There was Prussia, etc., different kingdoms. They fought for power. When they fought for power, they went through what they called the 30 Years' War, which saw a decimation of the population. Half the population died to sickness, disease, war. There was no, people were throwing doo-doo out the window, etc. There was no toilet, there was no sanitation, etc. Right? So, there was no sanitation before the Moors came. Afterwards there was, but there was so much destruction that it ended up going back, all right? So what was ironic was that during this treaty, they had a treaty called the Treaty of Westphalia. And the Treaty of Westphalia did something that has never been done before. It put all these municipalities under a common ground. Meaning what? Meaning you had city-states, you had duchies. Duchies is the kingdom of a prince, right? So I'm a king, I have a son, and I tell him, okay, yeah, Holland is yours. So they call it a duchy. It's his, but it's within the kingdom of a greater kingdom. And they had city-states that were just financial, sea towns, etc., port towns, etc. But they all got equal footing under what's called the Treaty of Westphalia, all right? The Peace of Westphalia. And it had never been done. This is the foundation of what we know as today as a nation state. So what happened is things reversed. If you were a king, you would have a kingdom, and it would, the kingdom lines would recede or expand based on your power, but you would remain. Whereas now the borders stay the same, but the king or the president is rotated every 4 years, every 5 years, whatever your particular version is. So they effectively took God out of government for their society because it didn't work for them. You see, for them, they had different gods. Remember, the 30 Years' War was primarily with the Protestants versus the Catholics. So when they put God in their government, they failed. This is Europe, right? And we've had our wars too, based on different beliefs. I mean, and I say that when I say we, Eritreans, Africans in general. It's not like we're above anybody in that regard. But at the same time, the idea or the concept of taking God out of government never occurred to us. And they did, it worked so well that they did it with everything. Take God out of state, take God out of education, take God out of medicine, etc. Right? So, they had the 30 Years' War. It set up the Peace of Westphalia, which set new ground for a nation state. Right? Now, there were some city-states that still existed in the 1800s. Right? This Peace of Westphalia, I want to say these 30 Years' War was in the 1600s, I want to say. So up until the 1800s, they existed. City-states existed, etc. Now, they had an idea to do that with everyone. This idea came about, spearheaded mostly with the discovery of the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone was a stone that had 3 languages on it: Demotic, Hieratics, which is the written form of hieroglyphics, and Greek, Plato and Socrates aged Greek. So with this stone, they were able to translate everything on the walls. And when they were able to translate everything on the walls, they came to understand that human civilization, like I said about this third dimension of time, it goes through a cycle, even collectively. We go through cycles daily, night and day. We go through cycles yearly. Summer and spring, which is day, winter and fall, which is night. But there was a third cycle that they got privy to, which was the precession of the equinoxes. There's 6 ages of day and 6 ages of night. And the 6 ages of day are starting with Aquarius. It goes backwards. So it goes Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, Scorpio, Libra, Virgo. Virgo is the age where the pyramids were built, which is why they're so exact, right? It's all about Virgo. So Leo is the beginning of the Dark Ages. So when the pyramid builders, the reason why they even built the pyramids is because they were saying, oh, we're going to downgrade collectively. Our collective consciousness is going to go lower. We're going to go to sleep as a consciousness collectively. Sorry about that. We're going to go to sleep, and therefore we need to make a marker of history out of stone. We can't write books because it's not going to last. The book is going to actually disintegrate in 6,000 years. Excuse me, 12,000 years. It's the cycle is 25,000. Call it 26,000. So it's like 25,960 or something like that. So call it 13,000 years. So they knew that their books wouldn't last 13,000 years, so they did everything in stone and granite, mind you. Why is granite? Because granite does not change its shape over time. Granite is the stone that you find at the bottom of a mountain. It's already been pressurized to its highest degree. It's the diamonds of stone. So they made everything out of granite. The blocks are 2 tons. I'm gonna make another video about that, the facts of the pyramids. It's incredible. So they knew this. They started to get this. You have to remember, the first quantum of physics experiment was done by Thomas Young. Thomas Young was the first person to decipher the Rosetta Stone. He was given it to it by the British government. So when he deciphered the Rosetta Stone, he did the first double slit experiment, all right? Showing that light is a wave and a particle at the same time. So already, you have to understand, only 16 years after deciphering it, they were already having high science, which is exactly what Egypt planned for. Now they planned it for their people, African people, but the universe has other plans, right? So Europeans got it, and remember, they're in the age of Pisces. Pisces is duality. I don't want to go too much into astrology, but basically, Europeans found it, and they ended up making a big wake-up call to every nation inadvertently. That's why China's supreme today, Russia's supreme today, everybody's supreme today. Even African countries are finally rising up today. People aren't getting away with everything today because everybody's waking up, because the trauma and the colonization and all this stuff created a collective alarm bell. Like, oh, we have to learn what the hell is going on. You see? So, yeah, that's the 30 Years' War, and that's the concept of what they came to do. So when they came to colonize Eritrea, etc., they did. They created nation states. They had to get rid of your kings and your queens, right? Okay, cool. So now let's break down the word Ethiopia. Ethiopia. Remember also that IA at the end of the word, you can look this as etymology. IA at the end of any word is land of in Latin. So Pennsylvania, Ethiopia, California, Romania, utopia. Utopia is heaven, right? U in mathematics is micro, so a small heaven. Ethiopia is opposite of heaven, right? We know this by, you can look at other words. Life is about motion. You stop life with emotion, right? So when you're emotional about something, your girlfriend left you, or if you're a girl, your boyfriend left you, etc., you might be sulking for a week and you can't move on because you're emotional, right? So Ethiopia is opposite or not utopia. So it's like them calling you nigga, all right? It's a disrespect word. It's a word of disrespect. Same thing with people say, oh yeah, we were Abyssinia before. Abyssinia again, Pennsylvania, California, again, same thing. What is an abyss? A great void, a great bottomless pit. Is that what we are? Land of the bottomless pit? No, of course not, right? So this is not our name. And that's mainly what Eritreans are saying. We know that we're connected as brothers. We have the same languages, food, etc., cultures, but we are not Ethiopian because you're not even Ethiopian. You see? So now, when they did their scramble for Africa, they needed a spearhead in order to conduct their massive plan, which is globalization, all right? So they had to have an exception to the rule. Now, Ethiopia was run by, mind you, when I say Ethiopia, there was no Ethiopia per se. Oromo had its own kingdom. Tigray were Muslim. They had their own situation. The Christian highlands were together. Tigrinya tribe, Tigray, a big part of Amhara region, etc. That was the Christian faction there, and they called it Ethiopia. You see what I'm saying? And they called it Abyssinia first, actually. So the name switched because, man, mind you, we're in a state of consciousness as Africans where we don't know what we are. We're taking names that you're giving us and just using them. So Ethiopia, Abyssinia, none of that mattered. It was never ours, obviously. All right? So Tedros was running the show. He had defeated Menelik's father and raised Menelik until he was 18. Menelik ended up going to Shoah, but he came back in a submission position that they say he had a rock behind his neck, symbolizing that he was submitting to Tedros because he didn't have the power. And basically Tedros, there's a book called Internal Rivalries and Foreign Threats. I have the book, and I will post it either as a link or somewhere in my channel, where Menelik is basically admitting that the people before him refused to take the documentation of creating a nation built. They wanted Africans. Oh, mind you, when the Berlin Conference, if Italy took over Eritrea, what they had to do was get local people to acknowledge, sign off. And this happened for every state in Africa. They had to get local chiefs or kings or whoever to sign off on the fact that, yes, we acknowledge Italy as owning this property of land. They would survey it, draw up a map, go back and say, this is mine. And look, these are the documents I have from so-and-so. So this is what Menelik did with Eritrea. He signed off on all of this. He was their representative, right? So, Menelik signed off on it all. Now, they had an issue. They needed Africa to merge with this idea of globalization, but they already colonized it and conquered it, so it looks like aggressors. So step by step, they were actually training people that were coming up in the hierarchy of the Ethiopian kingdom to take this different steps. So for example, the two countries in Africa that are not colonized are Liberia and Ethiopia. How was Liberia created? Liberia, again, Pennsylvania, California, etc., right? How was Liberia created? There was a I think it was not the Montevideo Convention. There was another society that was created in America because they had a fear of slaves rebelling. I shouldn't say slaves, black people rebelling to slavery. And they wanted a place in Africa to send these people so that they could, so they wouldn't influence anybody else. So they sent a group of black people who were selling out. They went to what we now know as Liberia. They bought up the land. They created a constitution and said, this is Liberia. So they built a colony. They built a nation state, just like Italy, just like England, just like whoever. And so they're considered not colonized. Same thing with Ethiopia. Menelik created the nation state. So Ethiopia was made in 1896, 6 years later, 6 years after Eritrea was created, right? Oromo wasn't part of his land. He took guns that the British gave him. Remember, the British supplied Menelik with all the guns he needed to defeat Italy because the British had another plan. They weren't worried about Italy. They had a globalization plan, and that globalization plan was to create a union, because you have to remember, you have to make the nation states first, then the unions, and then that will be the structure for this world order, right? So the UN, the unions, the nation state. Menelik did that. He signed off on it. He signed off on Eritrea. And then he also signed off on his own country for Ethiopia. He conquered Oromo, and then he said Addis Ababa, new flower, brand new flower, right? And to show you how much respect they had, the chair, he asked for a chair, like a king's chair, and they sent him an electric chair, and he used it as his. He has pictures. He used it as his official throne. That's the type of disrespect they had. They're like trying to make it seem like he was stupid. But mind you, he did what he had to do. I mean, obviously for me, he's not good or whatever, but for his age and generation, he made moves. You know what I'm saying? So I don't agree with any of them. You know, I think he sold out, but you can't knock the fact that he had a goal and he did it. It's just what it is, right? Hate him or love him. So that's why Ethiopia is considered not colonized today. Now, when Menelik's Menelik's son came about and Menelik passed, and mind you, before Menelik came, Johannes was there. Johannes took over. Johannes' son tried to be king. Menelik was stronger than him. Then Menelik got it. Then Menelik signed the documents. Menelik is king, even though he made a nation state, but they still give you the title of king because this is a go-between period. Nobody knows what a president is yet. You have to ease everything into people. So he passes. His son takes over. His son starts. This is during World War I. He starts to say that he's Muslim and that he's going to side with the Ottoman Empire. He wanted to break free from the British. And Haile Selassie and his auntie, I forget her name at the moment, weren't having that. America and Britain weren't having that. So they supported Haile Selassie in his move to take over, right? This is why they marketed him so bad. He was on the Time magazine twice. First black man to come into the White House as a guest, as a dignitary. He was taking pictures with Queen Victoria or Queen Elizabeth, I can't remember, Queen Elizabeth. They were doing all of this to make him look like, and they were creating this notion that, oh, they've never been colonized, they've always been free. But no, they've always been selling out. They've always been with the agenda, you see? And and what did Haile Selassie end up doing? He ended up creating the Organization of African Unity, which turned into the African Union, which is why the African Union is in Ethiopia today. So, now Eritrea's history reveals this, right? If you dig and you find that Eritrea was made first, Ethiopia was made second. If you dig and find out that even after the fact that we didn't get to vote, the other history is pretty common knowledge. The Benza Forza plan, how Senator Saint Lot from Haiti is the one that was he was upset that Libya was getting taken over. So, and we were part of that agenda, that document that put a bunch of countries together. So he ended up getting killed for trying to have freedom, for trying to create freedom for us. Not just for us though. His main thing was Libya and Israel, I believe. But we benefited from it too. Anyway, he was an OG. He went against his president. They ended up killing him. And regardless, you got to respect that man. So this is why Eritrea has been fighting, because Eritrea was already deemed to be separate, but was given as a gift because Haile Selassie cooperated in creating the Organization of African Unity. Right? So basically, Eritrea was made before Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is only a nation state with a European name. And that's what being Eritrean is about. It's not fighting Ethiopia for Ethiopia's sake. It's unraveling the mystery of our history. Eritrea is the one thread that can make the whole dress fall. You see what I'm saying? So, that's what it is. And now they want to, they need to erase that. They need to somehow get away from that, which is going to be difficult. But right now, as you see in Ethiopia now, they're warring and all that stuff. Most likely, they're trying to create micro states, just like break up Sudan. They probably want to break up Ethiopia. They have agendas that are nonstop, and they're going to succeed as long as you don't understand. So spread the word, and remember, knowledge is power. You're not here to, pick up a gun and do anything today. It's just about being conscious of it. Consciousness in itself is half the battle. So, that's it. And I'll be dropping that. Look for that documentation in the description. Thanks.